Are you a pro wrestling fan? Then odds are at some point in your life, you were a backyard wrestler. In this new series, I'm going to take you through how we came from this to this. It's a long story, covering nearly 2 decades. But if you're a nostalgic person missing the backyard days of yesteryear and a simpler time of the 90s and early 2000s, this is the story for you. This is Backyard Wrestling Cinema. Welcome to Backyard Wrestling Cinema Season 3, Episode 2. Now this was August 6th, 2002. Our last show was our pay-per-view called Aftermath, and it had occurred after a 2-month hiatus after a big blowout between myself and Rico DMF. We were getting ready to build to our next pay-per-view. Now at this time we were still borrowing a camera because our other camera had completely died, and we were still stuck with the date and time stamped on the camera, and even today, it drives me insane. Now, this particular show was a test to see if we can make tag titles and a tag division work in B4W in our backyard wrestling company. Now, before each tape, we would record for about 30 seconds, just a bunch of nonsense, because a lot of times with these VHS tapes, for whatever reason, if you didn't do a little recording, it seemed like they jumped a little bit each time you went to record over a tape. So if you recorded a match and started, ding, ding, ding with the bell, the next time you went to record, you'd miss that ding, 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 and it would start with whatever was after. So it'd miss a couple seconds. So we would always record a couple seconds of just bullshit, basically. In this particular one, the guys did like this opening because they always considered my entrance music to be like jazzercise. So it was one of those things that just ended up on camera and we have after all these years because it was basically just to make fun of me. In a good-natured way. It's not like it was meant with any malice or anything like that. The opening of the show saw Cobain pissed at homeboy Joe Slice, who had cost him the world title at the last show.
Oh, you guys want this? You guys want my belt? You ain't nothing.
Then TJ Money, the current world champion, came out, and no one could decide who his next challenger was. Homeboy wanted a shot, Cobain wanted a shot. As the owner, I came out with the debuting Bobby Bow, and matches would be set up for later in the day. Next up, we hit the music on our little CD player that sat on the table right by our commentary set, and there was no Ricky. Ricky just wasn't around. And we found out that he was in the bathroom.
I forgot to tell you. Turn it off. Ricky's in the bathroom. I should have told you. Oh, yeah. You idiot. Everyone punch Nick.
Something that I enjoy from a few of these rare master tapes that we still have are the bloopers. I mean, we didn't keep the master tapes because those little tapes that we would record on, they were just too expensive. They were like $20 each. And, for kids who were working at KB Toys part-time, that just wasn't something we could just have a bunch of masters of. Plus, we didn't really know that someday we might want the high-quality versions of these things. It was just a day in the life pretty much back then, so it was pretty much taken for granted. When Ricky finally did come out, he ended up messing up. At the time, we had a rule about no cursing on public access, and he happened to curse.
What is your problem? This tastes like crusty asshole. What was that talking about? Everybody punch that man now.
And the rule for no cursing was pretty simple. I didn't want all our promos, and I call it the Shane Douglas rule. And I'm a huge Shane Douglas fan, so I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. But there was a time where Shane Douglas would come out and do these great promos, and then it started to be I think around the time he turned babyface, all his promos were just F this, you effing F. And it was just literally curses, and he wasn't really saying anything in the promos. At least that's my recollection of it. So I didn't want our promos to be like that, especially, we're all 18, 17, 16, 19. We curse a lot to begin with. So to eliminate that means you have to be more creative in what you're saying, and it doesn't just become F you mother effer, and you have to say something. You have to say something of relevance, and you can't just rely on curses to get your point across, because we're fresh off the Attitude Era where everything was middle fingers and cursing. Rico DMF was now the commissioner, and he gave himself a TV title shot, but he offered to put his commissionership up as well as collateral. The match was against the champion TLD. In the end, Rico would try to use a chair, but it backfired, and TLD retained his title and got the win, and was now the B4W commissioner.
Chair, he scares away the lion. Oh my God! Oh, he hit himself with the chair. Oh! Whoa, winder by TLD. The pin. 1, 2, 3, oh.
Slug we had turned into a lackey character, and he was being a lackey to the High Rollers, which was Mr. Benjamin's and TJ Money.
Oh, I'm chilling with my boys. Why is that door not locked? I don't know.
So the guys were able to finally change the date, so they changed it to April 20th, 420. Hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. Then the date and time was finally gone, and I can't tell you, it drove me nuts. Mumbles was set to defend the hardcore title. We did a segment where we laid him out, and then we tried making it look like we dragged him behind my car. He took on a wrestler that was from our HWF days. He was one of our job characters called Captain Cadaver.
Captain Cadaver. Hey, Captain. Oh, geez, everyone's hanging out.
And this was actually just Tommy Thunder in a bad costume. It was our attempt to kind of get outside the walls of the backyard.
Send them down. Oh, a spear to the kneecap.
1, 2, oh.
What are you doing? Mumble just felt himself. Oh my God.
1, 2, 3, and Mumble regains
And Mumbles would retain the hardcore title in this one. Next up was Homeboy Joe Slice versus Slug, two former partners. Slug was being tricked by the High Rollers and convinced that Homeboy was the enemy. Now, these two really practiced this match. They went over it the entire time we were filming the segment at the playground down the street. In the end, Homeboy got the win. And it was one of the first times I remember Slug really putting an effort into a match. And to be honest, I was really proud of him for it.
Go for it. Oh, he nailed the drive-by. Come on. 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Benjamin's would defend the U.S. title next. We wanted to put the title on Cobain, but Benjamin's thought it was because he did something wrong. He was still new to wrestling, so he didn't fully understand that putting somebody over is actually like a big thing. He thought it was something that he had done wrong. He didn't put any less effort into the match, and he gave it all he had, but we had to give him a finish to kind of protect his character, which was basically that he defeated himself. He got him up in a surfboard and kept his arms down, and in the end, Cobain was the new U.S. champion.
1, 2, 3.
Benjamin lost the match.
Afterwards, Benjamin's gave him a stunner and left with the girl to kind of keep his heat, keep him happy. I know what you're saying, why is there politics at the backyard wrestling show? It was just a lack of understanding and not understanding what wrestling was at the time. Mr. Benjamin's eventually would understand that, putting somebody over or losing to somebody is one of the greatest things you can do in wrestling. But he wasn't there yet, and he didn't understand that just yet. Next up was the unusual team of Tommy Thunder and TJ Money, who was our world champion, taking on myself as Denver Street and my new protege, Bobby Bow, who is my bodyguard. And this was our trial run to see if tag matches would work, so I could finally bring in tag titles. I love tag titles. I've always wanted them. Every time we've tried it in the past, it never worked. And this would be no exception. TJ Money and Tommy Thunder worked as a good team and were able to win. After this match, I was convinced we could do a tag division. And we did, but it didn't work. And we'll get into all of that in the next couple weeks right here on Backyard Wrestling Cinema.
Ducking. Gets picked up. Oh! Oh, both of them got their on the shoulders. What are we going to see here? Oh, galactic drop and the Lesnar at the same time. 1, 2, 3, and your winners, Tommy. Keep walking forward. Big time forward slam.